source of man's greatest joy, his most treasured possession, the child. A child loves so much. The world around him, the sky, the sun, his whole environment. But above all, it is the child's love of freedom. Freedom of thought, freedom of expression, that makes such a profound impact on the conscious viewer. Coupled with this freedom, in a curious, unsophisticated sort of way, is an inborn imaginative potential. How, where, and whether this potential is developed is closely linked to the manner of the child's upbringing. One of the most fertile gardens in which this imagination can flourish and grow is in the field of child art. Child art today presents an intensely invigorating environment, an environment filled with the vitality of creating and developing. Here, children are meeting a special challenge of their own, on their own. They excite one another by the visual display of their work, by their animated chatter, and by their laughter. For some children, art begins early, at 4 and 5 years of age. One of the basic fields of artistic expression has, for eons past, been painting. Children learn to depict a variety of objects around and about themselves in a stimulating and satisfying variety of ways.
The child is actually a relaxed human being all the time, really, while it's working. There's no worries, no ties.
We definitely don't try and, inhibit them in any way in what they're doing. And we try to get them to use their imagination. I mean, I suppose imagination comes from feeling as well, doesn't it? In a way. You have a certain feeling inside of yourself, and you try to put it down. The child does the same, doesn't it? I mean, it might have been playing soccer or something, and it remembers something from that, and puts it down.
Adults have a set pattern already. Now, we found there are certain children that come and work, and not a word is said. They're very, very quiet. 1 or 2 lessons, a few more sentences are said, and suddenly they burst out and flourish. And those children actually very often become the most creative of them all. to me, a happy medium. So anybody really who would do it would find himself or not find himself. And those that really found that this is what they want to do and feeling happy in it, that's therapy in itself.
What does worry me at any level emotionally if a child turns around and says, I can't do it, and his continual feeling of inability or insecurity, this comes through quite strongly. I don't try and analyze a piece of work done by the children at all. Most of them seem to be fairly happy children, but as I say, the occasional insecurities come through and they start, well, I can't do it and I don't know what to do. And that I find a little worrying, and try and then talk to the parent and go into it a little bit.
Some children feel more at ease both within themselves and their surroundings in the use of a three-dimensional medium, a medium such as sculpture.
The work in stone is chipping and taking away. It can never be added on again. So a child does not like that. And he feels that he's losing confidence. Let's say you get a good stone here and you knock off half the nose.
Yes.
By that time the child is already discouraged. Now, we had a boy once, I think he was around 11 or 12 years old. He patiently worked on a slab of marble. And really, he thought he had made a very nice work, and I thought so too. And one day, it cracked right in half. Now, this boy is still with us, and nobody can ever forget that stone. But he smiled. First there was complete quietness, and then he smiled. So this is one side of it too.
One rather enterprising school of child art has introduced a relatively new variation in the field of sculpture, the material glass stone, or to the layman, good old common garden building plaster for walls. The child forms the basic shape out of a wire base. It is given its initial body by wrapping pieces of rag dipped in a glass stone water mixture around the wire shape. Once this is dried, the sculpture is built up with additional quantities of glass stone. And then the piece is sandpapered. Later, paint is applied and eventually the piece is varnished. There are occasions when children are inspired to produce something more grand than they previously felt capable. And on these occasions, though rare, the child experiences a creative satisfaction, an exhilaration, and more especially, perhaps, a newfound feeling of confidence and vitality. For some, the creative outlets are more basic. The child's instincts seem to reach out into activities which are not only artistic but functional. Such a field of exploration is provided in the use of clay or ceramics. There are many different varieties of clay. Each has its own particular properties and characteristics, demanding, in turn, a variety of approaches, disciplines, and skills. And, in time, a variety of objects is born.
There's terrific therapeutic work in art, and I think particularly in pottery or ceramics. It's a very relaxing form of art. The difference between ceramics and pottery and drawing is that if a child feels he cannot draw, he really is frustrated about drawing, whereas the child next to him can draw. In pottery, if a child cannot create the same pot next to him, he certainly can create a little car or an animal or something else which will satisfy him from a purely therapeutic level, which will help him. There's no doubt in my mind that it's good for them. It's so relaxing for us. It must be relaxing for them.
Possibly if there were more artists in the world and more people who felt as keenly as artists do, there probably would be less pollution, and we wouldn't have made as much of a mess of the earth's surface as we have done if there'd been people with this feeling, which you get, I think, very much so in artists. Artists feel very keenly, and I, for one, am horrified every day when I look out at traffic and hear of polluted seas and rivers. I do think it's because of the hard capitalist, hard core in people. Whereas, as I say, if there were more artists, I'm sure a lot of this would not have happened.
One of the most popular ceramic pastimes is to spend time on the wheel.
The clay medium, the sculptural medium, the terrific advantage is it's three-dimensional and it's plastic media. You can shape it at will. You can see a shape. Even a child sees a shape. He can bang a lump of clay onto a table and it has already produced something, and this starts him ticking, starts him thinking. As against a sheet of paper which is so flat and bare and can be quite frightening. Little girls have a different approach to art than little boys. Now, a boy may be found a lot on the soccer field or playing tennis or sport, which is also part of his expression, which makes a different kind of a person usually. And the child who is more withdrawn into the art studio is using self-expression on a different level. We usually call them more sensitive children.
One youngster, inspired perhaps by international competitions and championships, built up a full set of chess pieces, all of them out of clay. But art has never been confined to the more conventional forms of artistic expression, such as painting and sculpture. Art has many faces, many facets. And this is particularly true in the field of child art.
I think that if you're an artist, and even for a child, I think it must have or must get pleasure out of doing what it's doing. Otherwise it's a waste of time. Some people just haven't got it. They just don't want to, but you'd be surprised that they get taken up in the way, and away they go. And it doesn't matter if they've got this thing so-called talent. I don't believe in talent, actually, to tell you the truth. I believe that you have an urge to do it. This is probably more important than talent. I think if you've got about 10% of that thing called talent, 90% of it work, I think you're all right. Really. And if you've got 90% of that, then you're a genius, right?
How many people don't grow up in this world without really knowing what beautiful art is? They don't need to necessarily to become artists or anything, just to appreciate beauty or creativeness. Through learning art, they learn many other things. Poetry, art is poetry. Music, art is to me music too. They, hand in hand, will learn many a thing.
And, in the final analysis, what is the aim, if indeed one is needed at all, in the teaching of art to young boys and girls? It is in part to develop their imagination, their initiative, and their independence. It is also teaching the growing, searching child a mode of expression, a place in the family of man. People are only now starting to look back over their shoulders at these children, and they do so with nostalgia. For here is a young band of creators exploring the world, in their own way, fearless and unsophisticated, and packed full with ever-growing confidence. It is time, belatedly, to take a greater interest in these children. So put away your newspapers, forget Saturday morning at the office, let your child take your hand and lead you to a world for which all men yearn. These children, these creators of tomorrow, are a distant light, a hope for the future, and, if we wish it, a promise for an enriched way of living.